Welcome to the Valiant podcast. Today we will be reading about the story of Joseph, starting us in Genesis 37, verse 1. Really excited about it. Joseph is an amazing story. Before we get started, thank you for watching. My name is David.
I'm Jonathan.
We are believing brethren in the Lord and according to the flesh, and we like to read through Scripture verse by verse and talk about it in a fun and informative way to help you grow in your faith. You read through Genesis 37, didn't you? Before
Sure did.
this?
Yes, I did.
So how would you like to introduce the emphasis of this chapter?
Introduce the emphasis of the chapter.
Do you have any initial thoughts?
Yeah, I actually did realize how long the story was regarding how many chapters it goes over. And when you think about it, there's not a lot of stories in the Bible that are very long, focusing on one character.
Yeah.
The initial chapter, the starting one, totally brutal.
Yeah.
But others are actually pretty messed up.
Yeah.
Kind of a bummer.
Yeah. There's actually a lot to learn about, like, parenting
Oh, wow.
in Genesis 37 for the exact reason you just stated. So there's a lot of different directions you can take the story of Joseph. So it's going to be versatile.
Yeah, I'm excited to do the voices.
True. Do you want to be Joseph?
Yeah, well, why don't you be narrator? Because there's a lot of narrator
Oh, yeah. Okay.
in this one.
Yeah. All right. Let's get started.
Wait, how old do you think Joseph was?
It says how old he was.
How old was he?
I'm not going to tell you.
Okay. Yeah, you're right. Thank you. Spoilers.
You're welcome.
Yeah.
All right. Verse 1. Now Jacob dwelt in the land where his father was a stranger, in the land of Canaan. This is the history of Jacob. Joseph, being 17 years old, was feeding the flock with his brothers, and the lad was with the sons of Bilhah and the sons of Zilpah, his father's wives. And Joseph brought a bad report of them to his father. Now Israel, another name for Jacob, loved Joseph more than all his children, because he was the son of his old age. Also, he made him a tunic of many colors. But when his brothers saw that their father loved him more than all his brothers, they hated him and could not speak peaceably to him. Now Joseph had a dream, and he told it to his brothers, and they hated him even more. Yeah. So he said to them,
Please hear this dream which I have dreamed. There we were, binding is it sheaves?
Sheaves.
Binding sheaves in the field. Then behold, my sheaf arose and stood upright, and indeed your sheaves stood all around and bowed down to my sheaf.
And his brothers said to him,
Shall you indeed stop laughing at me. Shall you indeed reign over us? Or shall you indeed have dominion over us?
So they hated him even more. 3 times hated. So they hated him even more. 3 times hated. For his dreams and for his words. Then he dreamed still another dream and told it to his brothers and said,
Look, I have dreamed another dream, and this time the sun, the moon, and the 11 stars bowed down to me.
So he told it to his father and his brothers, and his father rebuked him and said to him,
What is this dream that you dreamed? Shall your mother and I and your brothers indeed come to bow down to the earth before you?
And his brothers envied him. So they hated him 3 times, and now they envy him.
Ooh.
But his father kept the matter in mind. Then his brothers went to feed their father's flock in Shechem. And Israel said to Joseph,
Are not your brothers feeding the flock in Shechem? Come, I will send you to them.
So he said to him,
Here I am.
Here I am. Then he said to him,
Please. That was like Obama for a second.
Please.
Please. I've lost the voice. Please, go and see if it is well with your brothers and well with the flocks, and bring back word to me.
So he sent him out of the valley of Hebron and went to Shechem. Now a certain man found him, and there he was, wandering in the field, and the man asked him, saying,
What are you seeking?
VeggieTales over here. So he said,
I am seeking my brothers. Please, tell me where they are feeding their flocks.
And the man said,
They departed from here, for I heard them say, Let us go to Dothan.
So Joseph went after his brothers and found them in Dothan. Bro, I literally have snot coming out of my nose.
Oh my gosh.
Hand me that, like, bag back there.
This?
Yeah. Sorry you guys have to see this.
Do you want some painter's tape? There's some painter's tape. There's a tract right there.
Did I get it?
Yeah.
All right. We'll call that good. So sorry. We'll leave that in for comedic relief.
Yes. We need some more of that.
Your VeggieTales voice is just, I just couldn't.
I like that. That's the random guy voice,
Yeah.
you know?
Yeah. Okay. Where were we? Now, when they saw him afar off, even before he came near them, they conspired against him to kill him. Then they said to one another,
Look, this dreamer is coming. Come, therefore, let us now kill him and cast him into some pit. And we shall say, Some wild beast has devoured him. We shall see what will become of his dreams.
But Reuben heard it, and he delivered him out of their hands and said,
Let us not kill him.
And Reuben said to them,
Shed no blood, but cast him into this pit which is in the wilderness, and do not lay a hand on him.
that he might deliver him out of their hands and bring him back to his father. So it came to pass, when Joseph had come to his brothers, that they stripped Joseph of his tunic, the tunic of many colors that was on him. Then they took him and cast him into a pit, and the pit was empty, and there was no water in it. And they sat down to eat a meal.
Wow.
That's low. Then they lifted their eyes and looked, and there was a company of Ishmaelites coming from Gilead with their camels, bearing spices, balm, and myrrh, on their way to carry them down to Egypt. So Judah said to his brothers,
What profit is there if we kill our brother and conceal his blood? Come, and let us sell him to the Ishmaelites, and let not our hand be upon him, for he is our brother and our flesh.
And his brothers listened.
Yeah.
Then Midianite traders passed by. So the brothers pulled Joseph up and lifted him out of the pit and sold him to the Ishmaelites for 20 shekels of silver. And they took Joseph to Egypt. Then Reuben returned to the pit, and indeed Joseph was not in the pit, and he tore his clothes. And he returned to his brothers and said,
The lad is no more, and I, where shall I go?
So they took Joseph's tunic, killed a kid of the goats, and dipped the tunic in the blood. Then they sent the tunic of many colors, and they brought it to their father, and said,
We have found this. Do you know whether it is your son's tunic or not?
And he recognized it, and said,
It is my son's tunic. A wild beast has devoured him. Without doubt, Joseph is torn to pieces.
Then Jacob tore his clothes, put sackcloth on his waist, and mourned for his son many days. And all his sons and all his daughters arose to comfort him, but he refused to be comforted. And he said,
For I shall go down into the grave to my son in mourning.
Thus his father wept for him. Now the Midianites had sold him in Egypt to Potiphar, an officer of Pharaoh and captain of the guard.
Whoa.
Whoa.
Sick story.
Yeah, crazy.
Dang. They ate a meal, bro.
Yeah, like what?
They threw him in the pit, and Joseph's like probably all bruised up, and then they're just like eating a meal.
Yeah. So, to get us started, there's like some cool stuff right at the beginning. So Joseph is 17 years old, okay?
Mm-hmm.
And
thanks for not spoiling that, by the way.
yeah, you're welcome. Joseph brought a bad report of his brothers to his father.
He was a snitch, dude.
Yeah. So this is what started it. So he's already the favorite, right? Which is another problem we'll talk about. And in addition to being the favorite, he badmouths his brothers, which is like not good.
How to get beat up as a little brother.
How to get beat up as a little brother 101. Yep. So his brothers saw that their father loved him more than they, and they hated him and could not speak peaceably to him. So there's a couple things to make note of. First of all, if you're a parent, what will create enmity or animosity between your children is picking a favorite. Okay? So don't do that. Now, some people might argue that, based on human psychology, parents always pick a favorite. Even if they don't say one is their favorite, they treat one differently. But that's not necessarily the case. The reality is that and it's even this way with God, in our relationship with God, that when a certain child is more well-behaved than another, naturally, a parent is going to be able to apply more favor and trust to that child, being that the behavior is better. And this is true also in our relationship with God. The Bible says that God can give more grace, right? In James chapter 4, verse 6. And we're told that we, as believers, are under the grace of God because we're believers. And it's not that God loves believers more than unbelievers. It's the fact that believers can experience more of the love and the favor of God in a state of obedience to God, right? And in 1 John chapter 3, you see, as an example of teaching on Genesis 4 about Cain and Abel, that it says God did not accept Cain's offering, but he accepted Abel's offering, and that made Cain hate Abel. So that's even an example from God where God doesn't love Abel more than Cain, but God accepted Abel's behavior but would not accept Cain's behavior, and as a result, Cain hated Abel. So the fact of the matter is that because as believers we can experience more of God's grace, being obedient to the gospel, that will cause envy, jealousy, and hatred often from the unbelieving world. What this does not mean is that we're more loved. And so to make sure we don't make the same mistake that probably Joseph made here in this case, we should not speak evil of anyone. Titus chapter 3 talks about this. It says, speak evil of no one because we also were once foolish and disobedient, right? All believers were at one point unbelievers, so we shouldn't speak evil of anybody. However, there are certain times where you simply cannot avoid having an honest report about somebody's bad behavior or sin where necessary. Just know that when you prioritize doing what is right and confront evil, people will hate you for it. That's just a reality that oftentimes you can't avoid. So those are some initial observations. If you're going to apply it directly, as I already stated, don't speak evil of people. And then also, as a parent, do your best to not pick favorites, but you can't avoid it in a case where you're able to offer more trust to a child that's more well-behaved.
Yeah. So a couple of clarifying questions there. So was what Joseph was doing speaking evil like in a bad way?
We don't know because it doesn't say.
Okay.
You can draw a principle not to speak evil of people out of the verse, but Joseph bringing a bad report to his father is not necessarily, it's not inherently a sin because we don't know exactly what he said, nor do we know if he was, making his brothers out to be more malicious than maybe they were, right? Or more nefarious than they actually were. So that's why I said sometimes you can't avoid speaking evil, or sometimes you can't avoid speaking the truth about somebody's bad behavior. But to the best of our ability, we should not do so with a malicious intent.
Yeah.
Right.
I mean, just looking at the context, if his brothers were the type of brothers to murder somebody, like pretty impromptly, I'd assume they were probably not the best behaved people.
What Joseph said was probably true.
Yeah. And it doesn't say he did a false or bad report or anything like that.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, so that makes sense. And then with the favorite thing, so his dad basically shouldn't have favored Joseph, but you were saying that I was a little confused about what you're saying there because it's like natural that you would have you would treat the kid who is obeying you differently than the kid who isn't. But wouldn't it be the parent's responsibility to kind of even it out,
Ultimately, yes. But it can be different. Bro.
We're both just covered
That's okay. So ultimately, what you said is true. Yes, a parent has to try their best to balance it out. But what I was meaning was that even though you should not love a child more than your other children, that was a mistake that Jacob made. You at the same time can offer more favor to a child that's more obedient because you can trust them more. And that can be confused with, in the eyes of the other children, as having more love for them. But that's not actually true. So that's why a parent has to understand that, yes, you should do your best to love all your children the same, but also know that it's not wrong to be able to extend more favor or more grace, really, to a child that's more obedient, simply because their behavior beckons it. You know?
I suppose
it's unavoidable sometimes.
Exactly. And the fact that it's unavoidable means that you probably should communicate to the other kids what's happening.
Right.
Because I think a lot of times, the one kid hates the other kid, but then nobody talks about why, the other kid is treated well because they're obedient.
Yeah.
What advice, really quick to put a little cherry on top of this, what advice would you give to the parent who is dealing with two kids, one's obedient, one's not? Would you tell them to do anything to make sure that one brother doesn't kill the other or sell them into slavery?
I mean, it really depends on the situation. I can't really give like a blanket statement advice other than what's already been stated.
I see.
To a specific set of parents. I think it's more like you got to do your best to love all your kids the same, but the reality is that when there's a child that's more obedient, naturally it's going to create some difficulty, between the siblings. And which is unavoidable, But the reality is, like, even if you include a proverb in this, like Proverbs says that a father and mother rejoice when their son is wise, but it brings shame and grief to parents when their son is foolish. Mm-hmm. So a lot of times kids are upset about the fact that their parents are grieved and feel shameful about them. And according to Proverbs, the only reason that's happening is because of your choices as a child, right? So when you make stupid decisions, your parents are going to have shame and grief about you. But when your choices are wise, your parents will rejoice. And oftentimes kids will misinterpret that as, oh, my parent loves this other kid but not me, and that's not the case. The reality is that you are loved, but you are going to be under a form of shame and disgrace if your choices are foolish. And as I implied earlier, if you apply this to the spiritual context, if you want more grace and love and experience more favor from God, then putting your faith in Christ and following the word is the way to get that. It's not that God suddenly loves you more. It's just that you're now able to receive more grace because the Bible says you receive grace through faith. Right? So,
yeah, it just happens naturally.
Yeah.
I guess the advice to the parent would just be then understand that there will be hard times.
Yes.
Oh, man.
Yep.
I wouldn't want to be the kid who's not favored. AKA, I'd want to be obedient.
Yeah.
Yeah, it makes sense.
Yeah.
Okay.
I mean, even like you and I growing up, I was a believer before you were, but even our different personalities, I was a little bit naturally maybe a little bit more meek per se than you were. But on a small scale, like, like mom and dad kind of assumed whenever there was like an accusation of us doing something wrong.
Yeah.
They kind of assumed that you were the one at fault.
Yeah. I mean, rightly so.
Right. Like, I'm not saying it was untruthful. Like, The reality is that not all the time, but a lot of the time you were.
60-40.
Probably 60-40. Yeah.
Maybe 65-35 on a bad day.
Yeah. And I think I had a better relationship with mom and dad for a time, at least, because of that, Yeah. But did you ever feel like that mom and dad like love you less? Did you ever feel like that?
Only for like 8 years.
Thank you for not killing me or selling me into slavery.
Yeah. I don't think I could overpower you. That's why I didn't.
Oh.
Yeah. I had to restrain myself.
Like you'd be killed before.
Yeah, I'd like throw you in the pit and then you'd like
climb out.
You'd trip me and I'd be the one falling into the pit. I'd be like pushing you and you'd sidestep. I would just fall and break my neck. I ran it through many times trying to figure it out. And I just couldn't get there. So instead, I just played video games and ignored everybody. No, but like, to be fair, looking back at our childhoods, you just seemed, I don't know, more happy, more like peaceful. I mean, you had fruits of the Spirit, literally, as a kid, because you were saved so early before me. So of course you're going to have, more favor from not just parents, but God and people around you. People respected you as a child due to your conduct, which is natural. And then of course, in return, people might dislike you, fear you, are jealous of you, whatever. That's just what happens when you're a Christian.
Yes. And in the world too, like everybody wants to be treated with respect, right? Nobody likes being disrespected, but people want to be respected and still be foolish.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then they get mad or upset when they're being foolish and they're not respected. And that's like your fault. If you're, like if you're being foolish and you're disrespected, well, duh, like you brought that on yourself, And it is that way for a purpose, because we're supposed to realize that sin is dishonorable. Sin is to be disrespected. In fact, I just read a psalm yesterday in my Bible reading time that I want to dig into this verse more. That says what a righteous person does is refuse to respect the proud. They will not respect the proud or the liar, which I was like, interesting. Like, you think, because we throw around the statement, respect everybody. And of course, to a degree, yes. Like, human life is to be respected. But when somebody is in pride or lying, you're not supposed to, respect them, the verse says, Which is interesting, because that's going to make people upset. And it's like, you still value them and care about them as a person, but you will not respect bad behavior, So, yeah, that's a side tangent. But
no, I mean, it's a great tangent, but it's a great point, because as a believer, you have to shun evil and understand that sin is really bad. And if you just allow it all the time, you're respecting evil.
Yep.
And then, in return, people will probably like you more, but you're not gonna do God's will. Truly.
Yeah. Yeah. It's also interesting to note about Jacob. And this is an argument against polygamy. Not that any of our audience is thinking about being polygamous, but so Jacob had multiple wives. And although he wasn't specifically condemned for doing so, the way that it happened was, Jacob is interacting with Laban, who is a relative, and Laban has two daughters, Leah and Rachel. And Jacob loved Rachel, wanted to marry Rachel. He worked for 7 years. Then Laban was like, you can marry my daughter. Still don't know how this happened, but on the wedding night, when he went into the tent with his new wife and then came out the next morning, and it wasn't Rachel. It was Leah, which is okay, I don't know how that even happens, but it happened. So he's like, bruh, you told me I was going to marry Rachel. And then Laban was like, sorry, you got to work another 7 years because it's not customary to marry the younger daughter first. So then he works another 7 years, gets Rachel. So now he's got two wives. He loves Rachel, doesn't really love Leah, which is kind of sad for her, right?
Super sad.
So then God showed more favor to Leah to extend her more grace by allowing her to have a bunch of kids, but Rachel was barren and wasn't able to have kids. And that was supposed to help balance out the sense of their ability to feel loved, right? It's sort of like when a wife does not get love from her husband, she draws it out of her kids, And so that's what Leah was doing, right? She was able to have a bunch of kids, so she got some comfort from her being a mother, whereas Rachel was loved by her husband but didn't have any kids. So Rachel gets jealous. She eventually gets pregnant. She has Joseph, and then later on she has Benjamin. But then Rachel and Leah start to develop this rivalry about who can have more kids. So Rachel, while she was barren, said, Jacob, hey, you should marry my maidservant so that she can have more kids on my behalf, so that I can say to Leah that I have more kids. So Jacob was like, bet. And then he marries the maidservant. And then Leah was like, I can do that too. So then she says, Jacob, marry my maidservant too, so I can have more kids than Rachel. So then there's just this rivalry, right, the whole time about who can have more kids, which is just ridiculous. And then Rachel dies. But that's a whole other story. But anyways, so the argument here is that none of this really would have happened if Jacob hadn't favored one wife over the other and then allowed himself to marry more wives, right? So he was sort of like submitting to his wives rather than having them submit to him. And that wasn't right. It created a lot of problems in his family. So the story of Jacob actually is a really good, at least narrative argument against polygamy, because some people will say like, oh, the Bible supports polygamy, but it actually doesn't. It just tells you that polygamy happened and how many problems it created. So it's kind of implied like you should just have one wife. And you'll avoid a lot of problems. Yeah, that's just a little side note there.
Thanks for breaking that down.
Yeah.
I was on the fence before.
Yeah.
So I'm definitely not going to do that. But I think it's clear too. I like the point you made. He submitted to his wife's like wants and whatever, and sometimes you just kind of have to put your foot down and be like, no, I don't think this is good, and then just decide. Yeah. That is a really good point.
Yeah. It's a good reminder that when you try to do things according to human wisdom rather than following God, you're going to create more problems in the future that you then will have to overcome that you could have avoided entirely if you had made the right choice to begin with, right? So it's always better to make the right choice early, because choosing what is right avoids future problems as well as present problems.
Yeah,
right?
Yeah, true.
Just like the story of David. We just doing that in the previous episode. He made a choice to commit adultery and murder, and the sword never departed from his house from that point forward as a result. Dang. So it's like choose what is right now.
While you still can. Before you have problems later. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Okay, so we're 2 verses in.
It's been 27 minutes already. What? Oh my goodness.
We know that polygamy is not a good choice.
Poopligamy.
Poopligamy. Polygamy, more like poopligamy.
So then, even verse 3 saying like Israel loved Joseph more than all his children because he was the son of his old age. Like it doesn't even say he loved Joseph because he was more well behaved. He just says he loved Joseph because he's the son of his old age. Yeah. So maybe that's part of the problem. Like if you're loving or able to extend more grace to a child because of good behavior, that might be more easily forgiven by your other children than if you just like are loving just because of some other random reason.
He was the baby.
Yeah. Exactly, because he was the baby.
Yeah.
Which is like, bruh.
It's weird that, I'm the baby, but.
Do you have a tunic of many colors?
I guess I got like a laptop. It's pretty close.
Yeah.
Like an iPhone when I was young. I guess I did kind of experience the baby love, though. Can't lie.
Did a little bit.
Yeah. Anyways.
All right. We'll go back to the scripture.
I could go into that.
Okay. So, tunic of many colors of the brothers saw. Okay. They hated him. Couldn't speak peaceably. So then you have this. Joseph had a dream. This has a really simple point, which is Joseph had a dream, and it was a true dream. So this actually happened in the future, where his brothers bowed down to Joseph much later in the story. He has 2 different dreams to communicate it, and his brothers hated him for it. So the main lesson, the result is his brothers envied him. The main lesson is that if you have a dream or an ambition for any kind of promotion or greatness, definitely do not share it with people that don't like you. And I would just say avoid sharing it with people, period.
Yeah.
Because it just doesn't create a good result. Yeah.
That's a good point. It's like you can have a really ambitious goal. You can have really big ambitions. You can shoot for the moon. But that doesn't mean you should just tell everybody that.
Right.
Because what does that do for you or for them?
Right. It just creates more enemies for yourself.
Yeah. Even like his dad, of course loved him, but his dad was like, bro, what? What are you talking about right now? And then his dad's like, what the heck does that mean? But his brothers are like, we're going to kill you. So it's like even his dad, he was just like, what? Why? So there's really no reason to do that.
Yeah, just don't. The more modern application, what you mentioned it, is like you can have an ambition to achieve something great, but don't be sharing it with everybody. It just creates enemies.
Even if you got a prophecy said to you, doesn't mean you got to share it with everybody.
Especially if you don't know if it's a true prophecy.
Yeah, true.
Joseph's dream was a true one, but especially if you don't know if the prophecy you have is real or true, definitely don't.
Yeah, he didn't even know.
Yeah.
He didn't even know it was true, so why even share it in the beginning with?
Yeah. Not all knowledge is meant to be shared. And that's a really important lesson. It doesn't even have to be knowledge that's like about personal promotion. Knowledge about anything spoken at the wrong time to the wrong person can create problems. So you should really be thinking about, just because you know something doesn't mean it should be shared. Just because you have a testimony or a praise report also does not mean it should be shared. And usually, if you have knowledge and you share it just because you feel like it or because you want another person to know what you know, usually there isn't ever a good result from that. You should only really share knowledge when you know, like 1 Corinthians 12 says, it's going to edify someone else.
Exactly.
Right? So will this information shared help this person? If you're not sure about that, just don't say it.
Yeah, that was the one point I was going to make is the whole thing about the dream is like super focused on Joseph. But it does seem like if you had something, like how you learn something that would edify another person, when you say that, you mean like lift them up. Obviously, go ahead and share that with that person. But if it's only lifting you up, you're pretty much just going to cause jealousy. And like, how is that going to motivate or help the other person?
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
So that's the key differentiator, right? If it edifies, you can share it.
If it edifies and... Well, I was going to say if it's not about like self-promotion, but I don't think sharing something about self-promotion like is ever going to edify someone else.
Yeah.
Unless it's an example where someone can be inspired by someone else's drive, right? Like, a common friend that we have who has achieved a lot in like work or finances. He can share about his goals and ways he's achieved things, and it doesn't make me jealous of him. It makes me be like, man, like I should push myself more.
True.
And he probably is aware that that's the effect it's going to have on me or us. So in those cases, like if you're talking to a trusted friend who knows that they want to be motivated, that they want to be motivated, then sharing from a personal example can be good.
Yeah, you would need to use discernment to know that that's true. You shouldn't assume that really first ever. Mm-hmm. It's probably safe to not assume that. Yeah.
Yeah, in fact, that very friend told me one time that anytime you share about something or pursue something that is outside of the norm of what people typically pursue in the world, it causes people to get critical and upset with you. Yeah. Because you're not normal anymore. People don't like you being not normal.
Yeah, as soon as you say, I'm pursuing all these crazy, huge goals, and this person makes $70,000 a year in their job, they're going to be like, well, why do you get to have all this blah, 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 and have all these goals? That's crazy. And all you're doing is just causing strife in that relationship.
Yeah.
So no reason you need to say all that.
Yeah. All right.
Sweet.
Yeah, I think we've beaten that dead horse. So his father kept it in mind. So long story short, it has this interaction about how Jacob goes to Shechem to find his brothers. Interestingly enough, a weird story about Shechem is last time these brothers were in Shechem, they killed a bunch of people.
What?
Yeah. Like, do you know that story about... So basically... Jacob had a daughter named, started with a D, Dina. Dina? I think it was Dina. Yeah. A daughter named Dina, and Dina was basically raped by
I do know this
a
story.
prince of Shechem. And so Simeon and Levi got super mad. I mean, rightfully so, but don't sin in your anger type thing. And they had a conversation with the men of Shechem, and they were like, hey, this prince of Shechem wants to like have your sister. And they're like, all right, fine, you can have her, but you got to be circumcised first. So they convinced all the men of this whole city to be circumcised. And then on the third day, when they were the most sore from being circumcised, Simeon and Levi single-handedly went into the city and killed all the men.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah. So, and this is that Shechem, like this is the same place, right? So they kind of like, Shechem does not have like a good vibe around it for that reason, So, yeah, it's kind of interesting.
I don't really have an appropriate comment
All right. We could just move on.
That it's crazy.
It was just
though.
an interesting connection.
Wait, I did have one question
Yeah.
about the dude who's like, your brothers are over there. I'm assuming that because it was alluded to that the brothers had no plan to murder Joseph. They just like thought of it as he was approaching. Is that right? Based on what the story says.
That's what it seems like.
Do you think the brothers were like supposed to be where they were, or do you think they were just doing their job and they were like what's the point? Is there any point to
Oh no, I don't think so. I think it's just telling you what happened.
Okay.
Yeah.
It's just odd.
Yeah. Okay, so the dreamer's coming, so they're like, let's kill him. And then Reuben's like, nah, let's not kill him. Just throw him in this pit. And then Reuben walks away. The traders come. The brothers, without Reuben's approval, sell him to the Ishmaelites and Midianites. Reuben comes back and is like, where's Joseph? And he's really upset. So then to try to create a different reason to cover it up, they kill the goat, put Joseph's ripped up tunic in the blood, and then bring it back to Jacob. And then Jacob mourns. So that's what happens in the story. Mm-hmm. Interestingly enough, Joseph is like a type and shadow of Jesus. Can you discern why or how?
Yeah,
We've talked about it before.
We have?
Mm-hmm.
Well, I mean,
I've shared it with you before.
It seems like he was like a sacrifice, like he was innocent and he was killed, right? So I don't know how much deeper I can go from that, though.
Yeah, I mean, you're thinking in the right direction. It's basically that Joseph was the favored among his brothers, okay? Jacob would represent God in this case, God the Father.
Okay.
Right? Jesus, God said, this is my beloved Son in whom I'm well pleased. Okay? Literally says the Jews, the Pharisees especially, the leaders of the Jews, being brethren of Jesus, because they're all Israelites, were jealous, envious of Jesus because of the favor of God and the prosperity of his ministry, essentially. And then Judas, together with the Jews, sold
for
Jesus.
20 shekels.
Yeah, so
Yeah.
for Jesus, it was 30 pieces of silver.
Inflation.
Yeah. And for Joseph, it was 20 pieces of silver. The amount of silver is not really important. It's just the fact that it was an amount of silver.
Yeah.
They were both sold into, quote, slavery. With Joseph, he was sold into the hands of the Gentiles, right? In this case, it was Midianites and Ishmaelites and eventually the Egyptians. For Jesus, he was sold into the hands of Gentiles, Pilate, the Romans. And the Romans crucified him. And it says that the centurion and the Roman soldiers for his clothing cast lots. And so they handled his clothing afterwards, just like Joseph's brothers then took his clothes, covered it in blood, And Jesus' tunic was probably also covered in blood, his own blood, from being scourged, obviously. So, and then later in the story, Joseph is exalted to the right hand of the king of Egypt, which is like being exalted to the right hand of God, right? And then his brothers bow down to him, and then all the Jews and Gentiles, every knee will bow and tongue confess that Jesus Christ is Lord. So it's an obvious, like, this is Jesus's life being hidden in the pages of Genesis. It's pretty cool.
Wow. I guess I didn't realize it was exactly on the nose.
Uh-huh. The story of Joseph is one of the most, like, Christ-like stories in the whole Old Testament as far as what happens to him.
I bet, man, now that I think about it, there's a ton of stories that are totally lined up. And even with, like, the same numbers and, like, coincidences of Jesus's, like, parallel to Jesus. Wow. Okay. Cool.
Yeah. So that being stated, it's more just like an Easter egg. It's just a really cool part of Genesis. But one thing you notice is, like in Philippians 3, Paul says, we're to know Christ, the power of his resurrection, and the fellowship of his suffering. Anybody that is a follower of God and of Christ is to experience a level of the sufferings of Christ. And our lives, in a way, are to follow the pattern of Jesus' life in our willingness to be sold into suffering or affliction by the world due to their hatred and envy for righteousness and for our faith in the name of Jesus. And so that's just how the cookie crumbles. Like that's how life is for a believer. You have to be willing to accept that. Doesn't mean you ask for it. In Joseph's case, he sort of brought it on himself with the whole like sharing his dreams and stuff. But the reality is some of it you can't avoid due to the favor and grace of God on the life of a believer. In choosing righteousness, we're hated by the world. And so there's a sense in which the world will sell you into slavery and then have a meal afterwards.
Totally.
Don't even care, which is like terrible, but it's reality.
Yeah, I mean, that's just basically how the world works. Life isn't fair.
Yeah.
And especially when you're righteous, you're separating yourself even further from fairness.
Yep.
And like define fair. God defines what fair is. So,
right.
Was there any comments about you kind of paraphrased a few verses in a row. How much time do we have, by the way? What time? How long?
We're 41 minutes in. So.
Oh, okay. Go back a few verses because I had a couple of comments, but I don't really remember. It was where we were. So with Reuben, I want to talk about Reuben. It seemed like Reuben didn't hate Joseph, really. But he was just kind of like still trying to be with the brothers, and obviously it burned him in the end.
Yeah.
There's obviously some modern context there that could be applied. Because it's to me, it seems like he wasn't, quote unquote, a believer, but he like kind of wanted to be, but he wasn't willing to give up essentially the approval of his brothers, right? Because he was still hanging out with the brothers.
Yeah.
And it burned him pretty bad.
Yeah.
Do you have any comments about that?
Yeah, I do. It's, if Reuben were truly in favor of Joseph, which is ultimately in favor of his father, right? It wasn't really about Joseph. It was about Jacob, right? And the other brothers were so blinded by their hatred of Joseph that they did not even think about how it would affect their dad, right? Like, you can imagine the feeling the brothers had when their father was so grieved, But in Reuben's case, rather than acting in full favor or protection of Joseph for the sake of his father Jacob, he was like, shed no blood, but still throw him in a pit.
Yeah.
Right? Which is kind of similar if you go to the story of Jesus, of like the way that Pilate treated Jesus, right? Because the way it happened was, this is another parallel I didn't even see before, that when Jesus was first brought before Pilate, the Jews were like, kill him, right? And Pilate was like, I find this guy innocent, but I'll still scourge him.
Yeah.
Right? To try to see if that would be enough for the Jews. So he like badly scourges him and then brings him back out to the Jews and is like, all right, like that's probably good, right? And they're like, crucify him, So Reuben's kind of like Pilate in that way. He was the guy that stepped in that could have stopped it, but instead, rather than actually stopping it, he just was like, throw him in the pit, right? Scourge him,
Yeah.
So, and this is a point, which is that you're either 100% for Christ or against him. You can't have a little bit of favor for Christ, but then not be fully committed, And that applies to how you treat believers too. Like Jesus said, you're either for me or against me. You can't have something in the middle. So you either are committed to Christ to defend, speak for Christ, or you're against him. If you try to be like the guy that's like, oh, like I like Jesus, but I'll still go with the crowd a little bit, you're not a believer. You're not under the favor of God in that sense. Yeah.
Yeah, it actually seems like Reuben's experience with the whole situation of Joseph dying / them having to lie to their dad and stuff probably was way worse mentally, way harder to deal with, and probably face the repercussions of that worse than the brothers, even though the brothers were arguably like worse character. Like you said, there's just hot or cold. So he was sort of like the warm water being spit out of the mouth.
The lukewarm guy. Yeah.
That experience sounds terrible.
Awful.
It's kind of like the person who's like, they quote unquote know they're going to hell, so they're like, whatever, screw it.
Yeah.
Versus the person who gets to the gates and Jesus is like, I never knew you.
Yeah.
Oh man.
Yeah.
Oh, that'd be terrible.
Yeah. Yeah. Terrible. Sort of like the grief that Peter felt when he denied Jesus 3 times.
Mm-hmm.
You know? Because he was somebody that had some sense. And to then do that would be awful. And Reuben was the oldest, too, of the brothers. So he probably was the one who was trying to protect Joseph because he's like, I'm the oldest brother. Like, I'm the firstborn son. I should be,
Wow.
you know.
Wow.
Yeah.
Dude, he was
Yeah.
the eldest. He totally could have stopped it. It's almost as if the whole thing was on his hands. You know?
Mm-hmm.
And he like kind of wanted to stop it. But he wanted, oh dude, he wanted the good of getting the approval from the brothers and stuff, but he still wanted to like save Joseph and be the good guy as well. And it severely did not work out.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, dude, the regret he felt. Oh my gosh. I'm curious, why did he like leave and come back? You know, it sounds like they didn't know.
Yeah, he didn't know. I don't know. So bring him back to his father. They stripped him of his tunic, cast him into a pit, sat down to eat a meal. Judah said to his brothers, and they sold him. Reuben returned to the pit. Joseph was not in it. So he wasn't there.
Oh, maybe they threw him in the pit and they went to eat a meal that was like a little bit further away. Maybe they left for like a day or something.
Yeah. Yeah, so Reuben obviously didn't know somehow. Oh, it's terrible.
Definitely God's will, but yeah.
Yeah. Still.
Oh, so sad.
Yeah.
So do you think the blood of the goat is a parallel, obviously, to blood of the lamb? Oh, dude, a goat versus a lamb. It's kind of interesting.
Yeah.
Any significance, you think?
I don't know about significance to that, but I think there is significance into the grief of Jacob over the death of Joseph, supposed death of Joseph, right? Which is just like the death of Christ. Because when Christ was killed, everybody was like devastated.
Supposed death. Oh, sick.
Right.
Flex.
Exactly. When they didn't realize his death was just really entrance into resurrection for him. But people weren't thinking about that. So they were like devastated, just like Jacob was, probably to the same level of sadness, only to realize that 3 days later he would be resurrected, you know, which made Jacob's grief completely useless, meaningless. Wow. But because of ignorance or lack of faith on the part of the disciples in Jesus' day, it caused that devastation, which is kind of a reminder to us that like we shouldn't grieve that much about the death of Christ, and particularly the death of fellow believers, because they're just resurrected, you know, like they're not actually dead. So that's supposed to give us more emotional fortitude in knowing that reality. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
How many years was he in slavery? Like, how long was...
13 years before he was exalted.
13 years.
Yep.
I wish it was like a clean 3 number. 13 though? I mean, there's a 3 in there.
He was 30 when he became the second in command.
Okay, that's a flex.
Yeah.
He was 30, and then how long was he second in command? 3 years? Be honest.
I don't actually know. Well, a long time, like up until his death, and he died.
But I mean,
you know,
when he became second in command, how many years was it until that he became exalted? Before the brothers.
His exalted. Before his brothers.
Before the brothers and the dad.
Oof. After the famine, so at least 7, or after the years of plenty, so at least 7 years before his brothers showed up. It wasn't the numbers.
The numbers aren't lining up. I don't think it's a parallel. Sorry, man. I just think it's so cool when numbers line up. I think it's Jonah in the belly for 3 days, you know?
Yeah.
But I guess that's probably why. The numbers are still like 7, and there's still like a lot of numbers in there. It's probably a deeper meaning than we realize. Any other comments about the family here with Reuben or any situation?
I don't think so. Not that pops into my head. You know, I think we pretty much covered it. Yeah, he was sold into slavery.
Give me a teaser of the next chapter.
Well, so then what happens after this?
Don't just give me the full summary.
No, the full summary.
So what happens after?
So it indicates at the end of the chapter he was sold in Egypt to Potiphar, an officer of Pharaoh and captain of the guard.
Yeah.
So that's the only detail we're given at the end of the chapter. And he basically earns the favor of Potiphar, only to be betrayed again.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Which says a lot about what it's like being a believer and what causes our suffering. To suffer as a Christian, not as an evildoer, which is pretty cool to learn about.
He suffered for doing good.
Exactly.
Which is smiled upon by God and
Commendable by God.
Commendable, and it's even more commendable that he didn't, go psycho after that, because that could. Yeah. That's the hardest thing to deal with when somebody's a jerk to you for absolutely the wrong reason.
Mm-hmm.
Oh man, I mean, bro got sold into slavery for being liked.
Yeah.
Oh man, huge bummer.
Yep. All right, we can finish with that. That was Genesis 37.
You have a core takeaway from today?
Don't be like Reuben.
Oh, I love Reubens. That's the thing.
Yeah.
Sauerkraut and
there's this other part about the story of Reuben that I don't remember if this is before or after. I have a feeling that it's after. I think it is after.
Uh-huh.
Yeah. But basically Reuben then ended up, I don't know if it was one of the existing wives of Jacob, but Reuben slept with one of Jacob's wives. I don't know if it was a different wife than the first four. It obviously wasn't Rachel. It was like a wasn't Rachel or Leah. I think it was Bilhah. I think it was one of like maidservant wives. Yeah. And so he was like on the bad side of his dad for like the rest of his life after this, which is like oldest brother downfall,
Dang.
It's pretty bad. Yeah. Yeah.
That's huge bummer.
Yeah. Huge bummer.
This whole story, dude, it's like making me so hungry because I love Reubens. You know any places that have good Reubens?
The other one's called a Rachel. That's really interesting. The other sandwich.
Oh, you're right.
Because a Rachel is with turkey.
Yeah.
And a Reuben is with corned beef?
Yeah.
Roast beef?
Roast beef.
Must be a reason for that.
Wow. I never put two and two together.
Yeah. Yeah.
Another parallel.
The story of Joseph is the origin story of the Reuben and the Rachel sandwich.
Oh, I'm getting so hungry. My mouth's literally watering, bro. Man, okay, my takeaway though, never exalt yourself.
Yeah.
Like, no, don't flex on people.
Yeah.
So stupid.
Yeah.
You're just like basically wrecking yourself for no reason. It doesn't do anything. In fact, it's actually better. It's probably more motivating to have the goal in your own mind for yourself and let that push you. Because when you start talking to people about it, it kind of like gets prideful, and then you don't actually take action. You just tell people about what you're going to do.
Yeah.
Oh, sick. Okay, so Genesis 39 next time?
Yes.
Because 38's kind of a side quest.
38's a Judah side quest.
Okay, cool.
Yeah.
All right, comment down below what your takeaway was. Like and subscribe. Goodbye. Oh,
one more thing.
yeah.
Download the Bible Acts app.
Ooh, sponsor.
We got an app. All the teaching that I do or that is discussed in this podcast is all contained in an app called Bible Acts. Go to BibleActs.com or hit the link in the description to download it for free.
Free app.
Yes.
Everything's free?
You'll have to find out. No, pretty much all the app is free. Yeah, pretty much.
What's not free?
If you would like to be a part of a fully, exhaustive online Bible college all in your phone, that part has a very reasonable subscription to it. Everything else is free.
Sick. Nice.
Yeah.
Nice little ad there. That was nice. That was good.
I need to start hey, we got more stuff,
Yeah. Yeah, if you need a coffee cart in the Twin Cities. Yeah, go to gondoliercoffee.com. See if you can spell that. All right.
That link will not be in the description. You just have to figure it out.
If you get to promote, right? maybe mom and dad need a coffee card or something.
Yeah.
All right. Thanks for watching.